Hello everyone. Hi Bev. Thanks for having me. I decided to make a video because I teach in EST to Vietnam online until 2 a.m. EST, 3 hours before the event begins. So and I really want to come because I want to hear what everyone has to say, but it's probably better if I don't try to say anything intelligent in such conditions myself. So here we are. Um, Thank you for having me. I had the pleasure of having Bev as a postdoc supervisor during what was otherwise a very challenging period, and as a result was able to finish my book on social movements and conspiracy theory just in time for the pandemic. So thanks, Bev, for all your support during those years. And, not only do you have this amazing theory brain that I love to think with, but you still do have some very good working class values, and I just really appreciate everything you've done for me. So I'm an anthropologist who works with class, right? So Bev, who approaches class ethnographically, does class better than most anthropologists, in my view, who either ignore class entirely or follow Bourdieu. And as we know, Bev does Bourdieu better than the real thing. Maybe not all anthropologists know this yet, so we'll have to fix that. Um, yeah, I wanted to work with Bev because I had discovered in my own ethnographic research of anarchist social movements in North America the performances of reflexivity and self possession that constituted their notion of good politics, and their classed propensities to self identify as other marginalized identities. And together with what I had read by Bendy Brown, really Bev's book, Class Self Culture, is the best to think through this, I found. Um, I found that book because I was in it. I was in a faculty seminar as a graduate student with like a fancy thing with invited guest Sarah Ahmed, and she was talking about feminists killing joy and the importance of killing joy and the importance of post-colonial feminists killing white feminist joy. And then I was like, oh, I know what comes next. And I said, okay, in the great joy-killing dialectic, what comes next? It's me. It's my job to bring up class to kill the post-colonial feminist joy. And the whole room goes totally silent. And I say, oh, I think I just succeeded, for the win. And to her credit, Sarah, turns around and says, you should read Bev Skeggs. And gracefully carries on. So thank you, Sarah. And here we are today. I study manners for a reason. And yeah, really, most of the intellectual conversation I have with Bev is about property and propriety, where our conversation is where Bev's work in formations meets the working class self culture. Because, of course, the self-caring self and the propertizing self are a similarly conceived classed self. But yeah, and so, I will talk about property in like 3 minutes at the end. But I want to mention first this essay that I wrote that's really directly engaged with formations, an essay that Barbara Ehrenreich commissioned me to write a couple of years ago. She says, can you write an essay on rage as self-care? She knows me. I'm like, oh yeah, definitely. I would enjoy doing this. And this is great too because it's my worlds coming together. You see, for this very brief and lovely period, I had both Bev and Barbara as mentors, and this essay, The Violence of Healing, is the great Bev and Barbara synthesis. It's like this like an autoethnography of my class mobility experience. Where I sort of scandalously refused to perform the empathy-producing, traumatized subject of the liberal bourgeois imagination, discussing how the self-caring self with many boundaries appeared strange and significant to me. And self-caring self with many boundaries also considers itself very significant. It reads books about itself. It even reads books about the fact that it likes to read books about itself. Technologies of the self, like all works of Michel Foucault, being of seminal importance. It was all coming together. The bourgeoisie is extremely self-absorbed and needs to set limits in order to keep things that way. And this essay is written by my heteronym June Thunderstorm, so it does sound like this, and it ends like this. Hold on. This I have to read. June inhales deeply in the downward dog position so as to get fucked in the ass by capitalists while maintaining peace in her heart. She relies on sarcasm to avoid despair. Because if she lets go of her anger, the sadness that swells up threatens to drown her entirely. In order to be well adjusted among the self-absorbed bourgeoisie, one must learn to be an individualist who possesses and maximizes herself as much as everyone else around them. If June Thunderstorm herself has recently recovered sensation in body parts that have been blank for over 20 years, it has been by following related instructions. Indeed, the efficacy of mobilizing resources to meet personal needs while setting boundaries with anyone who might interfere should not be surprising, as profiting from others' labors while erecting fences to prevent others from doing the same to you is an equation that has proved effective for a very long time. Great essay made possible by Bev. And at one point we had plans of bringing Barbara over, but her health failed, and to be honest, I haven't been able to look at this essay until recently. And Bev, we can't do the event with Barbara now, but we should do something with this. Anyway, even here in the genre of June Thunderstorm, and I will put in the chat later the oeuvre of June Thunderstorm so we know what's going on here. But yeah, even in the work of June T, the sarcasm about setting limits in the self, it's all about self-possession. And I'm going to use the last few minutes I have to talk a bit about how I want Bev's work to be understood in relation to anthropological theory about semiotic and legal property. David Graeber writes about this. I dumped David Graeber at the exact moment I started my postdoc with Bev, and he didn't make that particularly easy, but before that, he wrote this fabulous paper on manners himself that synthesizes the insights of Radcliffe Brown on joking relations, and Bakhtin on the carnivalesque, and Macpherson on self-possession, the possessive individual, and Norbert Elias on the civilizing process. And so he synthesizes all this to suggest that social hierarchy, and I wanted to get this right here, social hierarchy necessarily involves constructing superiors as abstract transcendental property versus the relative materiality or immanence of others. And here, David is intervening in Dumont's theory of hierarchy. Dumont had suggested that social hierarchy always involves semantic and legal encompassment, and Graeber is saying that hierarchies always involve exclusion as well as inclusion or encompassment, wherein the higher rank is set apart from a residual category composed of all the others at the same time as it includes them. Now, Dumont's discussion was only meant to apply to traditional societies. This is anthropology, right? But he's a structuralist working in this particular tradition. But Graeber, working with Macpherson, draws attention to a double movement of encompassment and exclusion in liberalism itself. And there's really no time for that exposition here, but the point is that by synthesizing Graeber on liberalism and Bev on neoliberalism, it really helps us see how identity-based rights involve the same combination of encompassment and exclusion as the original franchise. So like in her study of contemporary class, Skeggs is not particularly interested in pursuing a trans-historical structuralist claim. Okay, and it's arguable that Graeber as well as Dumont go a bit far or whatever. But the point is, Skeggs, also working with Macpherson, the concept of the possessive individual, shows how claiming selfhood in the neoliberal order is reliant on others being made available as both a resource and constitutive limit, which is a vocabulary that to me really is just very suggestive of the double movement of encompassment and exclusion theorized in David's Manners piece. So like Skeggs points out, with the advent of a liberal multiculturalism, new forms of property and its exchange are created, but only for those who enjoy prior forms of entitlement. Those who do not relate to the self, as does the possessive individual, form what Skeggs calls a residual underclass. Now, structuralist, post-structuralist, pick your poison. I think geometrically, and I can't help but notice, and I have an image that I'm going to try to show you somehow. But yeah, I can't help but notice that in Skeggs' discussion of the working class as both resource and constitutive limit in identity politics invites us to dig up Dumont to perceive that identity claimants both encompass the pain of and exclude from entitlement materially disadvantaged would-be claimants in the very act of making their own claims. Like, while it's not working class women, working class queers, trans people, people of color, and so on, who benefit the most from identity-based rights, these rights are based, at least partially, on the fact that relatively high quantities of their identity category are materially impoverished. And in this way, working class experience effectively becomes the semiotic and legal property of diverse bourgeois claimants. Through like slippages of statistics and semiotic property encouraged by thinking through the state. And Skeggs is concerned with the state, just as Graeber is concerned with queens and tribal chiefs, government. But the logic of rights has become mobile in the activists' concern that exclusion, about exclusion versus inclusion, about representation, and in the idea that someone of a given identity may give voice to others in that identity, others who are at once encompassed by it and who constitute it as property. So Skeggs' points stand beyond the question of material resources necessary to mobilize identity in one's favor. People who do not experience suffering as exceptional do not have the subjectivity necessary to propertize themselves via experiences of pain. There's this one footnote in Wendy Brown's book about how identity claimants avoid class analysis because without recourse to the bourgeois ideal of material comfort and legal protection, there can be no claim to exclusion. Injury, right? And in a way, my whole dissertation can be understood as a sort of theorization of precisely how class-based suffering becomes semiotically subsumed in categories of identity, and how this structurally, not incidentally, precludes possibility of property and identity for working class subjects, and how this fact both explicates and challenges existing Marxist claims for the particularity of class. And there's a whole dense exposition of this found in the Handbook of Marxism. Thank you again, everyone involved. I'm working on a more ethnographic text that I want to put in an anthropology journal, because I want to make it clear there that it was really by synthesizing Skeggs' work on the propertizing self with anthropological theory that helped me pinpoint precisely how, according to their own canon, Marxists should be fine with people organizing around identity-based oppression as a class. But insofar as identity is mobilized as property, no amount of your intersectionality is going to make identity politics better for the working class. In the full exposition and in Bev's own work, we see how class is just not attached to immutable property in the same kind of way as many other politicized categories. And so while Well, critics like Zizek are concerned about, an identity politics writ large that invites even the bourgeoisie to fully assert their identity and goals, at the expense of the working class. He actually gets it backwards. If class is particular, it's not because the working class uniquely seeks to annihilate its other, but rather that it alone seeks to annihilate itself, right? Itself. And this, we might note, is not particularly conducive to self-care, as Bev theorized in her work, or the good politics that I studied in mine. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, thank you, thank you.